Okay, so I want you to picture something, a superpower. I mean, an empire that for 400 years was one of the two great pillars of the known world. Just immense wealth, incredible military power, you name it. Now imagine it just vanishes. Wiped off the map in less than 10 years. That's not a movie plot. That's the real story of the Sasanian Persian Empire. And we've got to dive into this because how a power that big could fall apart so fast, well, it's one of the most incredible and frankly terrifying lessons in all of history. So, to really get why the fall was so shocking, you have to understand just how high they were flying. I mean, when the first Arab armies showed up at their capital, Ctesiphon, they were just floored. This quote here really says it all. Can you imagine walking into palaces just draped in silk, these incredible carpets on the floor, treasuries literally overflowing with centuries of gold and jewels? This wasn't some empire on its last legs. No way. This was a superpower at the absolute peak of its power and wealth. And that's what makes the story so wild. It was a giant, seemingly unstoppable, right before it all came crashing down. All right, so where does the end really begin? What's that first domino to fall? Well, it all starts with a war. And look, this wasn't just any war. This was the big one, the final, all-out apocalyptic showdown between the two superpowers of the day, the Sasanian Persians and the Byzantine Romans. This thing raged for more than 20 years. It was a brutal, grinding war that was meant to wipe the other side out completely. It bled both empires dry. But for the Sasanians, it was a victory that would end up costing them everything. You've probably heard this term before, Pyrrhic victory. It is the perfect description for what happened here. See, at the start of the war, the Sasanians were on an absolute roll. They were conquering everything, Egypt, the Levant, huge chunks of Anatolia. They pushed the Byzantine Empire right to the edge of collapse. But, and this is a huge but, holding all that new land and fighting off the inevitable, desperate Byzantine counterattack, it stretched their empire to the breaking point. We're talking about a whole generation that knew nothing but constant brutal war. It just ate up men, money, and resources like you wouldn't believe. And this chart right here, wow, it shows you the price tag in stark terms. The government basically burned through 85% of its entire treasury in just over 2 decades. Just stop and think about what that really means for a massive empire. That cash, it's what pays the army. It's what keeps the huge irrigation canals running so people can eat. It's what funds the entire government. And by 628, it was just gone. The state was flat broke, totally bankrupt. They couldn't even do the basics anymore. So yeah, they might have won the war, but the very foundations of their empire were completely wrecked. So you have this total financial meltdown, and that sets the stage for the next domino to fall. Because let's be real, an exhausted, bankrupt empire is a recipe for disaster. It's just not stable. Everyone started blaming the king, Khosrow II, for how badly the war ended. His own nobles, even his own son, they all turned on him. And in 628, they threw him out and had him executed. That one single act, it just shattered the whole idea of a stable dynasty. It kicked over that second, absolutely critical domino and plunged the empire into a brutal civil war. Just look at this timeline. It's pure chaos. In only 4 years, the throne of what was once one of the most stable empires on earth becomes this revolving door. You've got pretenders, generals, even kids. The new king, Kavad II, he dies of plague in a few months. Then you have generals marching their personal armies right on the capital to make themselves king. Different noble families are backing different guys. There's no one in charge, no central authority whatsoever. The empire is literally tearing itself apart from the inside out. Everyone is just fighting for the scraps. And all that chaos at the top? It had absolutely terrifying consequences for regular people. Society just starts to break down. Plague sweeps through a population that's already weak. Those vital canals, the ones that feed everybody, they fall apart, and you get widespread famine. Out in the provinces, the governors basically start acting like their own independent kings. And the army, that once mighty Sasanian army, it's completely fractured. The generals are more interested in fighting each other for the throne than, actually defending the empire's borders. Okay, so it's at this exact moment, the moment of total, maximum weakness, when the empire is just a hollow shell, that something new appears on the horizon. Out of the Arabian Peninsula, you have the armies of the Rashidun Caliphate. They're united by this new faith, Islam, and they start testing the borders of both the Byzantine and the Sasanian empires. Now, this is so important to get right. They weren't some unstoppable super army that crushed a healthy empire. No, They were a unified, disciplined, and super motivated force that just happened to show up at the perfect time to kick in an open, rotten door. And this right here shows you the critical mismatch between the two sides. On one hand, you have what's left of the Sasanian army. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were still tough, these heavily armored cavalry guys called cataphracts. But they were exhausted, they were divided, and they were slow. On the other hand, you have the Rashidun armies, who were the complete opposite. They were totally unified by their faith, they were lightly armored, and, this is key, they used camels. This gave them incredible mobility. They could strike lightning fast and then disappear before the slow, heavy Sasanian army even knew what hit them. And because of that mismatch, the final blows came down with just shocking speed. First, you have the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636. A huge Sasanian army, but it's riddled with bad leadership and infighting, and it just gets shattered. And just like that, the road to the capital is wide open. A year later, Ctesiphon, the legendary city, is captured and sacked. The psychological blow of that, it was just immense. The real final stand was at the Battle of Nahavand in 642. The Arabs called it the Victory of Victories. The last major Sasanian army was trapped and annihilated. And that was it. After that, organized resistance pretty much just stopped. The empire was gone. Okay, let's pull all of this together. So why did this 400-year-old superpower actually fall? What's the real takeaway here? The main thing to remember, the whole point of the story, is that the invasion from the outside wasn't the cause of the collapse. It was just the final symptom. The Rashidun Caliphate didn't knock over a healthy, strong empire. They just walked into a vacuum that the Sasanians had already created all by themselves. So here it is, the whole sequence, all the dominoes just tipping over one after the other. First, that disastrous war with Byzantium that bankrupted the state and exhausted the army. Second, the king gets assassinated, creating a massive power vacuum and destroying any kind of stability. Third, the years of bloody civil war that just shredded any unity that was left. And then, and only then, comes number 4. The new unified power arrives on the scene to take advantage of the chaos and give it one final push. So yeah, the most important point is this one right here. On the eve of the conquest, the Sasanian Empire was a hollow giant. That's the perfect way to put it. It still had the famous name, the incredible history, the reputation of a superpower. But inside, the state had basically stopped working. The armies were broken, the treasury was empty, the government was a mess, and the people were just reeling from plague and famine. The whole thing was just rotten from the inside out. And all of this leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. See, the story of the Sasanians, it isn't really just about one empire falling. It's a pattern you see again and again throughout history. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often is it that a new era begins, not because the conquerors are just so incredibly strong, but because the old guard has already managed to defeat itself? It's a pretty sobering thought that sometimes the biggest threat to any great power isn't some enemy at the gates, it's the rot from within.